bearing the brunt of this escalation. Evacuations are also underway.
It's happening 7:30 in the morning. We was in the Mamad. When the bomb hit the building, we feel the Mamad moving, and we stay inside until we can go out. And when we go out, we see all the damage in the apartment.
We got the call early this morning to our dispatch of a building being hit here in the residential community. We quickly arrived, went into the building to medically evacuate anybody that needed assistance.
Nations have been scrambling to rescue their citizens from Iran and Israel. This includes India. New Delhi has stepped up efforts to bring its citizens home. Hundreds of Indian nationals arrived after being evacuated from Iran. According to reports, there are around 10,000 Indian citizens in the country.
Around hangars and a refueling aircraft and various fighter jets including F-14 and F-5. The Israeli Air Force further added that the strikes were conducted to neutralize the operational capacity of the Iranian military. The Israel Defense Forces also released video of strikes on Iran's storage facilities in the Yaz region. The Israeli military claimed that these storage sites were used to store long-range surface-to-surface missiles. They hit the Iranian targets from a distance of over 2,000 kilometers. This footage came after the American strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. Iran's armed forces stated that they have targeted multiple sites in Israel. This includes the Ben Gurion Airport, a biological research facility, logistics bases, and various layers of command and control centers. As per Iranian reports, at least 40 missiles were fired towards Israel. The attack reportedly injured at least 23 people. Loud explosions were heard in Jerusalem after the Israeli military warned of incoming Iranian missiles today. Sirens were sounded for at least 30 minutes before the blasts. No damage or casualties have been reported so far. The Israeli military first said that the missiles had been identified, but later warned of more missiles. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is close to meeting its goals in Iran. Speaking about Iran, he said, and I quote, "There is no doubt that this is a regime that wants to eliminate us, to erase our existence," end quote. He also added that the Israeli offensives were launched to remove two existential threats, nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, after launching high-precision strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, US President Donald Trump stated that the attacks have caused monumental damage. He further wrote that the biggest damage to Iranian nuclear sites took place far below ground level. Donald Trump added that obliteration is the accurate term to describe damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Donald Trump also hinted at regime change in Iran on social media. He wrote that it is not politically correct to use the term regime change. But if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Israel's parliament building was illuminated in red, white and blue as a tribute to President Donald Trump. It came hours after Trump announced the US had obliterated Iran's key nuclear sites. Israel is believed to have coordinated the attacks alongside the United States. The B-2 stealth bombers have come back to the US after striking Iran's key nuclear facilities. The US strikes were a part of Operation Midnight Hammer. The bombers landed near Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. 7 B-2 bombers deployed by the US flew an 18-hour mission to Iran and dropped 14 bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear sites in Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan. Trump will meet his national security team today. According to the White House, he will be discussing the ongoing conflict with Iran and the results of the American strike on the nation. American cities including New York, Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles have been put on high alert after strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. The U.S. State Department also issued a worldwide caution for Americans, stating that the conflict in West Asia could put those traveling or living abroad at increased risk. Officials have also asked U.S. citizens globally to exercise increased caution. The US is calling on China to intervene and stop Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz. This after Iran's parliament approved a plan to close the key global trade route, with a final decision on it is still pending. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned in an interview that Tehran shutting the waterway would be economic suicide and could spark a broader international response. Rubio then urged Beijing to act, citing China's heavy dependence on oil flow through the strait. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has vowed punishment for Israel amid the ongoing conflict. The leader on X wrote that Israel has made a grave mistake and committed a major crime. He further added that they must be punished and are being punished now. However, he made no mention of the US strikes on his tweets. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said that US must receive a response for serious acts of aggression. He said this during a call with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. Pezeshkian condemned the US for carrying out strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites on June 21. The president's statement came after a large-scale protest in Tehran over the strikes. Iran's Defense Minister Amir Hatami stated that the US will face a decisive response. He called the strikes on Iran's nuclear sites a crime that will not go unanswered. Earlier, a military spokesman also warned of serious consequences for the United States. He said the attack expands Iran's range of legitimate targets. Iran has also called the US strikes a betrayal of diplomacy. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said the attacks, launched just 2 days before scheduled talks, came from a nation now at war with Iran. He accused the unmanned country of undermining dialogue, stating that the future generations will not forget this act of aggression during a diplomatic process. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin today. The minister stated that he will hold quote-unquote serious consultations with the Russian president. Meanwhile, Russia has strongly condemned the American strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, calling it irresponsible and a gross violation of international law. In Vienna, the head of the UN nuclear watchdog convened an emergency meeting in light of the urgent situation in Iran. The meeting also comes after America hit Iranian nuclear sites. The meeting is currently underway with discussions on nuclear safety and security. French nationals evacuated from Israel have landed in Paris. The evacuation flight arrived at Orly Airport late on June 22. Over 160 people traveled through Jordan to reach the flight. The French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot met them at the airport. Passengers described long journeys and shared relief on returning home. Reactions from across the world continue to pour in on the escalating tensions in West Asia. Backing the US strikes, Australia warned against full-scale war in the Middle East. Prime Minister Albanese said Iran failed to abandon its nuclear program. Meanwhile, Japan urged de-escalation and return to dialogue. Japan's chief cabinet secretary said the strikes show Washington's determination to act, but expressed deep concern over Iran's threats to the US interests. Both nations urged calm and a return to diplomacy. North Korea also condemned the US strikes on Iran. The country called it a violation of the United Nations Charter. A foreign ministry spokesperson said Iran's sovereignty was ignored. North Korea also blamed Israel for rising tensions in the region. It claimed Israel's actions have led to war and instability. This is North Korea's first response after US strike. Widespread protests broke out globally after the American strikes on Iran. In the US, a group of protesters also organized a rally outside White House. Hundreds also gathered at the Times Square in New York chanting "Hands off Iran." Protests also took place in Los Angeles opposing the US bombing of Iran. Meanwhile, Canadian nationals also protested outside the US consulate in Toronto, while demonstrations were also seen in countries such as Pakistan, France and Greece. At least 22 people were killed and over 60 were injured in a suicide bombing at a church in Damascus. According to reports, the blast hits Mar Elias Church during a Sunday mass. Local officials say a bomber opened fire and then detonated his vest. Security sources believe that the attacker was linked to the Islamic State. It is the first such bombing in Damascus since Bashar al-Assad's fall. Ukrainian officials say Russia launched major missile and drone attacks on Kyiv. The strikes hit overnight on June 23rd, killing at least 6 people and leaving at least 19 injured. A residential building collapsed, trapping people under rubble in Kyiv. Ukrainian media reported damage across multiple districts. A humanitarian organization has raised alarm over child sexual abuse in the DR Congo. The Save the Children organization said child abuse cases have tripled in African country, with over 170 children assaulted since January. The report comes as fighting once again erupted earlier this year in the restive eastern DR Congo, with Rwanda-backed M23 rebels seizing large swathes of the region. On to business and tech news now. Oil prices surged to 5 months highs after the US joined Israel in striking Iran's nuclear sites, stoking fears of a supply shock. Brent crude futures was up 2.49% at $78.93 a barrel earlier today, while the US West Texas Intermediate crude advanced 2.56% to $75.73. Shares in Asian markets slipped earlier today as investors anxiously waited to see if Iran would retaliate against US attacks on its nuclear sites. The MSCI index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan dropped 1%, while Chinese blue chips dipped 0.2%, and Japan's Nikkei slipped 0.6%. Futures also traded lower in Europe, with the Euro Stoxx 50 down 0.4%. The US dollar firmed slightly earlier today as anxious investors sought safety, with markets waiting for Iran's response to US strikes. The dollar rose 0.25% against yen to 146.41 after touching a one-month high earlier in the session, while the euro slipped 0.33% to $1.14. Bitcoin fell to its lowest level since May over the weekend as rising tensions in West Asia and renewed inflation fears triggered a sharp sell-off across the digital assets. Bitcoin dropped below the $99,000 mark on Sunday, its lowest level in more than a month, while Ether plunged over 10% at one point, as the digital asset market became the first to price in rising geopolitical risk. Commercial airlines around the world were weighing how long to suspend West Asian flights after the US struck Iran. Singapore Airlines cancelled flights to Dubai, calling the situation fluid, while Air France, KLM and British Airways also halted routes to the region. Meanwhile, flight tracking data showed empty space over Iran, Iraq, Syria and Israel. Air India announced a second round of flight reductions, cutting less than 5% of narrow-body jet routes to maintain operational stability after a deadly crash earlier this month that killed 241 people on board. The airline said 2 daily flights to Singapore had been suspended, along with disruptions on 19 domestic routes, with changes to remain in effect until July 15th. Britain will aim to cut the electricity bills of thousands of companies under a new industrial strategy to be published today, heeding calls from business to lower high energy costs that they say have damaged competitiveness and hindered growth. The British government plans to cut the bills of electricity-intensive manufacturers by up to 25% from 2027. New Zealand said there had been a rush in applications for its new foreign investor migrant visa as the government looked to attract more high net worth individuals to boost economic growth. The government said it received 189 applications in less than 3 months under the new visa, compared to 116 submissions over more than 2.5 years under the previous settings. Tesla deployed a small fleet of self-driving taxis in Austin, marking the first time its vehicles carried paying passengers without human drivers, in what CEO Elon Musk called the robotaxi launch. About 10 vehicles were spotted operating with safety monitors in the front passenger seats as part of a controlled pilot run. Chipmaker Wolfspeed said it plans to file for bankruptcy in the US under a restructuring agreement with creditors that would cut debt by nearly 70% and provide fresh financing. This comes after Wolfspeed warned last month that it might struggle to continue operating amid trade policy uncertainty and weak demand. And finally, moving to sports, we begin with cricket. The first of the 5-match test series between India and England is underway in Leeds. At the end of day 3, India lead by 96 runs with 8 wickets remaining in the second innings. After Jasprit Bumrah's 5-wicket haul helped India bowl England out at 465, KL Rahul's 47 not out helped India stay in control. Captain Shubman Gill and KL Rahul remained on crease and are set to resume their innings on day 4. In hockey, India midfielder Lalit Upadhyay announces his retirement from international hockey. With this, the Tokyo and Paris Olympic bronze medalists brought the curtains down on a career that spanned from 2014 to 2025. A natural playmaker with an uncanny knack to attack, Lalit Upadhyay played 183 matches for India and scored 67 goals. His final appearance in the Indian jersey came against Australia on 15th June. In football, Manchester City booked their place in the Club World Cup last 16 with an emphatic 6-0 rout of Al Ain Atlanta. City ended their first half with a 3-0 lead after a 73rd minute goal. Oscar Bob and Ryan Cherky's successful hit sealed the game for the City. In tennis, men's world number 2 Carlos Alcaraz clinched his second Queen's Club title with a 7-5, 6-7, 6-2 win over Lehecka. The Spaniard blasted 33 winners and 18 aces to subdue the Czech world number 30. Having won titles at the French Open, Rome, Monte Carlo and Rotterdam, Alcaraz has now collected 5 trophies in 2025. And the Oklahoma City Thunder defeated the Indiana Pacers 103-91 to clinch their first NBA Finals crown with a 4-3 series victory. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander scored 29 points to seal the emphatic win in front of a rapacious crowd of spectators in Indianapolis. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. I am Gursheen Garland and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Vantage. I'm Alison Lagrange. Let's get started.